Good evening, and welcome to Peaceful Sleep Seasons. I'm really glad you're here tonight. This is a gently narrated sleep story with soft background music created to help you unwind and drift into deep rest. And as always, there will be no loud noises and no sudden sounds. After the story ends, the music and ambience may continue for a while, so they can accompany you a little longer while you sleep. If you'd like the video to end sooner, you can use YouTube's sleep timer in your settings. And it can help to switch off autoplay, so your sleep won't be interrupted by unexpected audio later. Now, make yourself comfortable. Let your shoulders drop. And whenever you're ready, you can close your eyes or simply soften your gaze and allow the evening to become quieter. Tonight's story is called A Quiet Christmas Eve Visit. It's a slow, warm, nostalgic Christmas tale, told in the third person, having said we got back had in weed. A story about snow, gentle memories, and the quiet meaning of the night. Snow began falling before the sun was fully gone. Not the dramatic kind that arrives with wind and urgency, just a patient snowfall, drifting down in soft pieces, as if the sky had all night and nowhere else to be. In the small town of Evergreen Hollow, streets quieted early on Christmas Eve. Porch lights warmed the snowbanks into gentle gold. Window panes glowed from living rooms where fireplaces were lit, and dinner plates were drying on racks. And inside a simple house at the edge of the pines, Elena Harper moved through the evening like someone handling something delicate. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't even trying to get everything done. She was doing what felt right, one slow step at a time, letting Christmas arrive the way it wanted to, softly. Elena had come back to this town after many years away. Not for a party, not for a crowd, just for a quiet Christmas Eve, in the house where her childhood winters had taken shape. The living room still smelled faintly of wood, pine, and cedar, like the walls remembered being trees. The floorboards had the same gentle creak in the same places. The mantel was the same mantel, broad and sturdy, with small nicks from the corners of old photo frames and holiday decorations. Even the air felt familiar, warm near the fire, cool at the edges of the windows. Elena had lit the fireplace an hour earlier. The flame had settled into a steady, comforting rhythm, not loud, not lively, just a calm glow that made shadows move slowly across the walls. She set a small pot on the stove and turned the heat down to low, where it would stay quiet and obedient. Inside the pot, hot cocoa warmed gently, stirred now and then with a wooden spoon. A little cinnamon, a tiny pinch of salt, a slow swirl of steam that rose like a soft ribbon and vanished. On a plate beside the sink, gingerbread cookies waited simple shapes, lightly spiced, not overly sweet. Their scent wasn't sharp. It was friendly, like an old song hummed softly. Elena moved around the kitchen without turning on the overhead light. She preferred the warm lamp on the counter. It made everything look kinder. When the cocoa was ready, she poured it into a thick ceramic mug and carried it into the living room with both hands, as if warmth was something worth protecting. The tree lights were already on. Not the blinking kind, just a steady glow, warm white, like small stars that didn't need attention. The tree itself was modest. It didn't stretch to the ceiling. It wasn't perfect. Elena had chosen it on purpose. Something that felt like a quiet nod to Christmas, not a performance. And hanging along the mantel, beneath a simple evergreen garland, were 2 stockings. Elena had found them in a box in the attic earlier that day. One was red, slightly faded, with a soft cuff that had worn thin over time. The other was cream-colored, plain, and cozy. For a long moment, she had stood there with the box open, looking at those stockings as if they were something alive. Then she had hung them up anyway. Not because she expected anything, but because some traditions weren't about expecting. They were about remembering. She sat on the sofa with the blanket pulled over her lap, cocoa warming her hands, and listened to the quiet. Outside, snow continued falling, tapping softly against the world. Inside, the fire crackled now and then. Small sounds, never sharp, never sudden. Elena's gaze drifted toward the stockings, and before she meant to, she thought about the last time she had truly believed in them. She remembered being little small enough that the living room felt enormous. She remembered the way the tree lights seemed brighter then, as if they carried an extra kind of magic. And she remembered the secret part of Christmas Eve that only children seemed to know. The part where you tried to fall asleep and couldn't. Not because you were afraid, because you were full of wonder. Elena's childhood stocking had always hung right there, on the left side of the mantel. Her brothers had been on the right. Every year, Elena would write her wish list in careful handwriting, folding the paper into a small square as if the neatness mattered. She would slip it into the stocking like a private message. Not mailed, not delivered. Just placed there, quietly, for Santa. Sometimes the list was practical. A new sweater for her doll, a puzzle, a book with shiny pages. Other years, it was full of bright, impossible things. A pony, a castle, a tiny penguin that could live in the backyard. And every year, without fail, she added one item at the end because her mother said it was important. Something simple, something grateful, something like, "Surprise me," or "Anything you pick is okay." Elena smiled softly into her cocoa. She had forgotten how serious she used to be about that list, how carefully she chose the words, how the act of writing felt like making a small promise to the night. She could almost feel the paper between her fingers again. could almost see her own childhood handwriting. Round letters, slow and careful. As the snow deepened outside, Elena's mind wandered further back, as if memory had its own quiet snowfall, layering one soft moment over another. She remembered the year she built her first snowman. It had been on Christmas Eve afternoon, the sky pale and low. Her mittens were too big, and her sleeves kept slipping down, letting cold sneak in. She and her brother had rolled snowballs that grew larger and heavier with every push. Their laughter had risen into the air like steam. They had made the snowman lopsided, because children always did. The head was a little too small. The body leaned slightly, as if the snowman was listening. They had used buttons from an old coat, different sizes, mismatched. For a nose, they found a short carrot in the fridge, not very straight, but perfect anyway. This is not cone, this is the basso. And for arms, they had chosen 2 branches from the edge of the yard, twigs sticking out like fingers. Elena remembered standing back to look at it, their work, their winter creation, and feeling proud in a way that seemed larger than the snowman itself. Not because it was perfect, because it was theirs. She could still hear her mother calling from the porch, telling them to come inside for something warm. She could still smell wet wool drying by the fireplace. And she could still feel the little sting of cold on her cheeks, turning into warmth as she stepped into the house. Elena shifted on the sofa now, as if her body remembered that warmth too. The firelight played softly across the room. A clock ticked somewhere in the quiet, slow and steady. She took another sip of cocoa, letting the taste settle. Cocoa had always been part of Christmas. So had peppermint, the gentle coolness that made sweetness feel crisp. So had the smell of pine from the tree. So had dinner sometimes ham, sometimes turkey, sometimes a roast that filled the house with hours of warmth. And always, always, there had been something in the oven that smelled like comfort. Elena stood and moved to the kitchen again, her steps quiet on the wood floor. She checked the tray on the counter where Shed placed a few simple foods for the night, just because it felt right. A small plate with 2 gingerbread cookies, a few slices of apple, a tiny bowl of nuts. Not a feast, just a soft offering. And then she did the thing she hadn't done in years. She poured a small glass of milk. She set it on the tray. She placed the tray near the fireplace, close enough to feel warm, but not too close. Elena didn't speak. She didn't announce it. She just placed it there gently, as if this was something the house itself understood. Then she returned to the sofa, the blanket around her, the room quiet again. Outside the window, snow fell more steadily now, turning the world into a softer version of itself. And somewhere in that steady hush, the night seemed to deepen. It was later than Elena realized. Christmas Eve had a way of making time feel like it moved differently. slower in the moments that mattered, faster in the ones that didn't. She switched off one lamp, leaving only the tree lights, the fire, and a single warm glow in the corner. The room dimmed into something gentle, and that's when she noticed it. Not a sound, not a bang or a thud, just a change. A subtle shift in the way the snow looked outside, as if the air had become more luminous. Elena turned her head toward the window. At first, she saw only the familiar scene, the porch railing dusted with snow, the pine trees beyond, and the dark sky above. Then she saw a faint moving shadow cross the snow-lit air. High, quiet, smooth. Elena's breath slowed. She didn't sit up suddenly. She didn't gasp. She simply watched, calm and still, like someone witnessing something meant to be gentle. Across the sky, just above the treetops, something glided. It was not loud. No harsh bells. No sudden noise. Only the faintest suggestion of motion, a soft silhouette moving through snowfall, like a dream passing by. And for one brief moment, Elena saw what her childhood heart had always imagined. A sleigh. A figure wrapped in red and soft winter fur. A curve of a hat. A quiet steadiness in the way it moved, as if it had been doing this for a very long time. As if it knew the way without needing light. Elena's eyes softened. The scene didn't feel frightening or strange. It felt familiar. Not as a fact, as a feeling. The way a song can be familiar, even if you can't remember the first time you heard it. The sleigh seemed to pass slowly, drifting beyond the trees. And then, as gently as it arrived, it was gone. Thank you for watching, and adieu, Cobrivedios. Elena sat very still. The fire continued. The snow continued. The tree lights continued. And in the space it left behind, Elena felt something open inside her, something tender. She thought of herself as a child again. Not the adult version who knew about schedules and responsibilities. The child version. The one who wrote lists and tucked them into stockings with careful hope. The one who believed in wonder. And Elena realized something quietly important. She didn't miss the toys. She missed the feeling. The feeling that the night was kind. That the world could be generous. That something good could arrive without being demanded. She looked again at the stockings on the mantel. For a moment, she considered writing a list just to see what would happen inside her if she did. Not because she wanted things, because she wanted to remember what it felt like to speak gently to the world. Elena stood and walked to the drawer where Shed placed a small notepad. She tore out one page. She found a pen. And then she sat at the coffee table, firelight warming the paper. Her handwriting now was different, more hurried by habit, less round. But she decided to write slowly. Not fancy, not poetic, just honest. She wrote, "Dear Santa," and she smiled at herself because some parts of the heart didn't age the way the body did. She continued, "If you're out there tonight, thank you for the quiet. Thank you for warm lights. Thank you for snow that falls softly. And thank you for the way Christmas can bring people back. Not just to places, but to memories." She paused, pen hovering. Then she wrote something else, something she didn't expect. "Tonight, please bring something gentle to someone who needs it. A warm meal, a kind message, a feeling of being remembered." She read the words once, twice. Then she folded the paper into a small square, just like she used to. And without making a big moment of it, Elena slipped it into the cream-colored stocking. She didn't feel silly. She felt lighter, as if she had placed something down that she'd been carrying without noticing. The fire crackled softly again, as if agreeing. And outside, snow continued its quiet work. Elena leaned back on the sofa, blanket warm, eyes heavy. But before she let herself drift towards sleep, she stood one more time and walked to the window. The porch steps had a thicker layer now. The yard looked untouched and smooth. The pine branches held snow like decoration. And in the stillness, Elena felt the soft urge to do one more thing. Not for anyone else, just for the child she used to be. She put on her coat, her boots, her gloves, and she stepped outside. The cold met her gently clean, calm, and bright. Snowflakes landed on her sleeves and disappeared. Elena walked into the yard and chose a spot near the pine tree, where the ground was flat and the snow was fresh. She bent down and gathered snow into her hands. It was powdery and soft. She rolled it into a small ball. Then another. Then another. She worked slowly, unhurried, letting the cold be part of the moment. Soon, she had a small snowman. Not tall, not impressive, but sweet. She found 2 small twigs for arms, a few stones for buttons, and for the face, she used tiny pieces of bark that looked like eyes in the right light. She didn't have a carrot, so she used a pine cone for the nose. It wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. When she stepped back, she smiled. The snowman looked like it belonged in a quiet holiday card. Elena reached up and pulled her scarf slightly tighter. Then, after a moment of thought, she removed it and draped it around the snowman's neck. It was an old scarf, soft, worn, the kind of thing she could replace. But the gesture mattered. It felt like giving, like participating in the meaning of the night. Elena looked up at the sky. The snow made everything brighter, even the darkness. And she imagined Santa still moving through the town quietly, steadily stopping at houses where children were sleeping, leaving gifts in a way that would never wake them. She imagined little hands in the morning, reaching into stockings, finding surprises and sweetness. She imagined laughter later in the day, not loud, but joyful. And she thought softly, without forcing it, that perhaps the greatest gift of Christmas wasn't any single present. It was the way the holiday gave people permission to be gentle, to be kind, to remember, to give. Elena walked back inside, wiping snow from her boots at the door. The house welcomed her again with warmth. She hung her coat. She returned to the living room. And she paused, because something had changed. The plate of cookies looked slightly different. Not dramatically, just as if one cookie had been moved. The milk glass was not as full. And on the hearth, near the edge of the tray, rested a small object. Elena approached slowly. It was a tiny bell, not shiny and loud. A simple bell, old-fashioned, with a soft, matte finish. The kind of bell that would make the gentlest sound. Beside it lay a folded note. Elena's heart didn't race. It softened. She picked up the note and unfolded it carefully. Inside, the handwriting was simple, neat, kind. It read, "Thank you for remembering. Thank you for giving. Merry Christmas." That was all. No grand explanation. No extra words. Just that. Elena held the note for a moment. Then she placed it on the mantel, beside the stockings, where it could rest like a quiet ornament. She set the little bell next to it. She didn't ring it. She didn't need to. The presence of it. Elena turned off the last lamp, leaving only the tree lights and the glow of the fire. The room became soft and dark and warm. She walked to the bedroom. The bed was ready, clean sheets, thick quilt, pillows arranged simply. Elena slid beneath the covers and exhaled slowly. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, the fire continued glowing. And on the mantel, 2 stockings hung in warm light, holding not just wishes, but something deeper. Memory, hope, kindness. Elena's eyes closed. Not in a dramatic way, just gently. Her breathing slowed. And in the quiet of Christmas Eve, she drifted into sleep with a feeling she had not felt in a long time. A feeling like being cared for. A feeling like the night was kind. A feeling like Christmas at its heart was still exactly what it had always been. Soft, warm, and full of gentle wonder. And now, The story is complete. You don't have to hold on to every detail. You can let the words soften and fade into the background, like snow settling quietly on the world. If you're still awake, that's perfectly okay. There's nothing to force, nothing to fix. Just rest in your own time. And remember, the music and ambiance will continue after my voice, so please, don't rush to turn anything off. Let the gentle sound carry you a little longer while you drift. Safe, warm, and quiet.